So when it comes to making YouTube videos that are interesting and compelling for your audience to want to watch, one of the key ingredients is storytelling. And I'm excited to bring my friend Katie Quesada on the show today to break down what a storyteller does and how you as a content creator can start to include more stories in your videos. All that and more coming up. Hey, what's up? It's Heather Torres here with the YouTube Made Simple show, where we're helping you overcome fear, build confidence, and launch your successful YouTube channel. And today I have my friend Katie Quesada on the show. Now, Katie has been speaking and teaching at conferences for over a decade. And in that, she's helping people learn how to storytell. She is a compelling storyteller coach. And I met her recently at an event, and she blew me out of the water with the way that she can connect stories with content creators. And so she is on the podcast today. We're going to jump right into the interview. But before we do, I want to let you know that we have a brand new YouTube class. If you've not taken our free class about how to get started on YouTube and get your first 1,000 subscribers and beyond, you definitely want to register for that at thinkmasterclass.com. All right, let's get into today's featured conversation with my friend and storyteller coach, Katie Quesada. Well, Katie, I am so excited to have you on the YouTube Made Simple show today. You and I met actually at a conference recently where you did such an amazing job on stage, really talking about how our stories matter. And I was like, I need to bring you on the show because so many content creators disassociate themselves from their content. And when you can bring in your story, when you can talk about your past experiences and really help to align that through your business, you really can get to know, or your customers, your viewers can get to know you. So talk about how you even got into the story world, the storytelling world.
Yeah, totally. So 5-ish years ago, I was a part of a large organization, and we would do these events every month, in-person live events. And we'd bring in speakers. I'd speak at them. I've been speaking for years. That was kind of the vibe. And then one event, we brought in this amazing woman named Dr. Tama Bryant Davis out of Pepperdine University. And she stood on the stage on a Friday night at this event. And she said, I was backstage sitting right behind the curtain. And she said, did you know that there's a Barnes and Noble of untold stories here in this room? And I felt this like really radical conviction that I wasn't supposed to speak there anymore. And I wasn't supposed to bring in speakers. I was supposed to teach people to tell their stories. So I was a little bit nerve-wracking because I knew it was true, like in my gut, but also I was like, am I putting myself out of a job? And is anyone going to want to come back to these things? Like they were successful events at that point. I was like, am I going to crash the truck? But I knew it, and I knew it was right because we did have an auditorium filled with incredible people, and I knew that. And so I flipped the script, and then for the next 3 years behind the scenes, every other month, I would coach 3 people of very diverse backgrounds, ethnicities, ages, stages, all of it, to tell their story in 6 minutes, their life story, usually around a theme. So like advocacy, hope, joy, grit, hustle, and then they would tell that story in 6 minutes. So I did that over and over again. This was a very small part of my job, actually. It was kind of like a hobby part of my job. And then when I knew it was time for me to quit my job, I was going to leave that organization. And at the same time, wildly, my husband and I were selling everything and moving into an RV full time. Somebody said to me, aren't you going to miss speaking at those events? And I said, no, I'm going to miss coaching at those events. Mm-hmm. And it was when you like say something out loud and at the same time you realize it's true, even though you said it. So I was like, oh yeah, that is a thing. And so like 3 years ago now, I said, I'm a storytelling coach. And I just started to tell people that, and I made it up. And then for the first year, it was like slow building. And then now super thankfully, 3 years later, it's thriving and it's been a gift. And I help people and companies tell better stories. So sometimes that's like a fractional chief marketing officer for a high level company. And sometimes that's sitting across from somebody and listening to their story for an hour and just telling it back to them in 5 minutes and us crafting it together. So it's individual coaching, corporate coaching, speaking, all of those things. I just think about stories all day long. So that's what I do for a living.
I am so excited to break this down, especially for content creators, because
Yeah.
a couple years ago, when Sean and I started doing our web classes that led to the products that we were selling, a big part of it actually was to be able to tell our story
Yes.
inside of what we were packaging so that people could actually relate to, we've been where you are and we know the solution. And it was so illuminating to me on like how much our brand story matters and these little pieces. Like you just said that you did tiny living. The
Mhm.
YouTube Made Simple show viewers know that I'm obsessed with RV life.
Yes.
And so those little pieces where we can connect with each other and be able to have something that allows someone to know, like, and trust us. So I want to get into, for content creators, for YouTubers, how does this look? Like, what is a brand story for them?
Yeah. So if you're a personal brand story, like you are the face of something, you are the main part of something, you have to tell your story. You need to be able to share that story and talk about who you are. Now, I know that that's kind of like tricky and feels a little bit like maybe is that too much information? But what's important here is that you know how to talk about moments in your life and things that have shaped you. You do not need to tell the entire story. Let me tell you, you do not need to come on and do a 19-minute YouTube video on here is my story. You really have to do the hard work of whittling and condensing and concising the information in order to evoke emotion and really meet with a brand. And when that, I mean, meet with your brand values. When that happens, it's really successful.
Yeah, and when I think about YouTubers, and when they're creating videos, for us here, we're creating videos on lights and microphones and YouTube tips,
Mhm.
but people know our values because we'll talk about those moments where I'll say something like, the hardest season of my life was really when we were $40,000 in debt. I wasn't successful at anything yet, and I couldn't figure it out. Those types of things,
Yes.
like that one sentence
Mhm.
becomes such a connector. So I want to walk through why do brand stories work? When you think about a content creator, they're making 10-minute videos, 20-minute videos, 5-minute videos, 15-second Instagram stories. How do you make the story work into, product-based content or into content that may not be just storytelling content?
Yeah. So there's amazing research about storytelling. I mean, unbelievable, never ending research. If you want to go down a rabbit hole, go down that rabbit hole. But I'll come up out of the rabbit hole for you and just show you a little bit of it. But there's this incredible study out of the University of Ohio where they put 100 people in one room and 100 people in another room. And in each room, they presented the same information, but in one room, they gave facts, and in the other room, they told a story. But it was the exact same information. 100% of the time, the storytelling persuaded or created a change of opinion faster than the fact. So the story worked 100% of the time faster. Yes, the facts maybe in the end supported the cause or helped the story. Storytelling neurologically and physiologically aligns like heart rates. There's incredible research about how storytelling engages us, it captivates us. And really for a person who's creating content, there's a buzzword that's funny, but the truth is what you're trying to do is make something that resonates with someone. But how do you do something that resonates? What do we mean by that word? Oh, that resonated with me. What's weird is what you're really trying to say is I kind of thought about myself when I was listening to that. And when you can help someone think about themselves, you're telling a really good story. Really great speakers, really great storytellers. For some reason, in the middle of their talk, you're like, my dad was like that too.
Yeah.
Oh, I also do that. You're not consciously thinking those thoughts, but you're having a warm feeling that feels very good. And you're feeling this feeling of resonating. So you want to create moments where your audience can resonate with you. And that happens through storytelling. Come up with micro stories, exactly like you just said. Like the hardest season of my life was, that's a great story sentence. Let's start there. That is a great content creating video. That is a great moment for people to know because they can resonate with you. They can feel that. We've all had hard stories. And for a lot of content creators, there is a real, I think we feel this pressure to have really like everything really tied up and great and like perfect. And so we come on and we think like, oh, so last year I made $1 million and everything's great. Guess what? That story doesn't resonate with me.
Right.
It doesn't. So now I have a story that doesn't resonate with you, even though you might think that that's helpful. The truth is we have to create moments that resonate with people.
So good. In one of the classes that I teach, I talk about how the first time I talked on stage, which was a virtual stage, I had my arms like this because but my armpits were sweating so much.
Yes.
So I was like, if I move my arms, and literally people in the comments will be like, oh, I remember when you talked about your pit sweat. I'm like, glad to be known for that. But it's relatable. And
Yep.
I think, in the book that I just wrote, I interviewed a lot of different content creators. And one of the things that content creators who were scared to launch or scared to really go all in on YouTube, they were scared to put their personality or to put themselves out on camera. And they were like, I will be a robot and just make the video. And it's like, just be you, just be normal, but also bring in those stories like pit sweat that are relatable in everyday life. So how would a content creator, like, how do we do this? What are the actual tangibles of like finding our brand story? And brand story is quote unquote personal story. Like you said, you don't have to share everything. And I believe you shouldn't bleed on people. Like if it's not healed, probably don't share it. Just hold on to that.
Sure.
But like, how do you tangibly figure this out? Like, what should you share?
Yeah. So if you are running a company or you have a product you are selling, so if the story needs to be product based, then you need to tell a compelling story where you solve a problem and where your customer is the hero. So this is incredibly important. In all great brand strategy storytelling, you are never the hero. Your customer is the hero. You are the helper. So there is a mom and she's having a really hard time getting her kid in the bath. And then she found these amazing glow sticks that she throws in the bath. And now her child loves bath time and she's having the time of her life. See, in that micro story I just told about the glow sticks in the bath, the mom is the hero in the end. The glow sticks helped her. They're the helper. We have a really big tendency to become the hero of the story. The truth is, in great customer-based storytelling, if you have a product, then the customer needs to be the hero. Now, if you're a personal brand and your content is you and your own story, then you have to do the work to mine some life events that have values attached to them. So this is a little bit of what I shared at the conference that we were at together, but the difference between a micro story and a macro story. So for a lot of people, we are trying to come up with this like specific event and have that one event really shape everything that we do. So for example, I sit across from a client and the client says to me, oh, Katie, I'm a cancer survivor. I survived cancer. I have stage 4 cancer. I want to talk to cancer survivors because I have this very specific cancer. It's all about cancer. And I'm like, that's great. What did you learn from the cancer? And then after some work together, she can say, oh, I learned resiliency. And now her story is about resiliency. And a story about resiliency is one I can come into. A story about cancer, I can't. So we actually want to open the doors as wide as we can by turning micro stories into macro stories. And how you do that is you attach a value to an event. So look back on your life and say, the hardest season of my life was that. What I learned was this. Look back on your life and say, what I learned about that was humility or authenticity or purpose or passion. And finding these value words, and you can Google like value words. And honestly, a great activity is to Google value words, then circle some of them, and then just write a story about what happened. Reverse engineer it to kind of mine some of your stories, just so you can continue to really make the story as wide as possible and to let as many people in as possible.
Yeah. And I think another piece, one thing that I learned super early on in my online career was that always bring honor. Always bring honor. So no matter if you're in a situation and a problem happened with someone, and don't bring gossip, bring honor to whatever that situation is, because there is always a better way to project a story that doesn't pull down other people. So I love what you said too, Katie, that everyone has a story. So someone might be listening right now and they're like, I'm here to get YouTube tips and Heather's bringing me a storyteller. But the reason for it, Katie, is because everyone has a story. And one of the mandates I feel like is on my life is to help people get in front of cameras and start telling those stories. Get your message out there, get your voice out on video.
Yeah.
I would like you to just encourage some people right now who maybe feel like, this isn't for me. I don't really want to talk about myself. It's so important. So can you just give some encouragement to people who may be in that space?
Yeah, I think one of the great lies that we believe is that stories are created for comparison. like, oh, she has a much more important story than me. So I'm not going to tell my story because her story is crazy. And that is a massive lie that I think is really unhelpful, because stories actually are good in masses. So it's so important to remember that almost all of us are narratively shaped by multiple stories. So almost all of us are shaped narratively right now because a lot of different people told the same story from a different vantage point. So we actually don't need a couple great storytellers. We need a lot of medium ones. Like that is radically what the world needs. And I think that's true of platforms. I think that's true of the internet. I think that's true across the board. Like for all of us, we actually need a collective of storytellers. We don't just need like one super story. So when you can see your life that way, it's not like, oh, she has a more amazing story than me. Wow, she's way more important than me. Wow, he made way more money. So nobody needs to hear my story. That's actually unhelpful, because what we need is way more versions of whatever story inspires us. So we need 1,000. We don't need one. So as we tell more and more and more stories, it really does shape narratives and change the world.
I'm just getting so fired up, because to me, I love telling people, like, YouTube needs you. They need you. They need your story. They need your gift. They need you exactly the way you are. You do not need to change. You do not need to compare. And so I love that so much. All right. I want to shift gears and go practical. How do content creators, how do YouTubers, how do they practically put this into their content? How do you grow into this? And what does that muscle look like? How do we get there?
Yeah. So you want to evoke emotion, and you want to do something, say something kind of memorable. These are some of our takeaways, but you also want to do it in a way that is concise. So the conciseness is probably the hardest part, because for a lot of us, storytelling is a skill we've never been taught. We've never even thought about. We've never honestly even thought about it one time, And I say all the time in the work that I do, the question is not if you're a storyteller or not. You are. You are always telling stories. The question is just, have you ever thought about them? So no matter who is listening, you're a storyteller. You have to deeply and innately believe that, because it's true. You are telling stories about your kids, about your family, about your job, about your passions, about where you're from, about your hometown, about what scares you. These are all stories. So when you can see yourself as a storyteller, that's kind of step one. Then step two would be start to do some research to figure out what parts of the story are the most compelling and where can I condense it. So some of the work that I do is that there are people who are really detail, like specific, and I have some workshops for this too, where we work through like, what type of storyteller are you? And then how do you get better? But for some people, they just have way too much context. Like they would start their story with like, it was 1997 and I was wearing yellow. And it was Wednesday. No, it was Thursday. Oh, shoot. You know what? I'm going to call my brother real quick and find out if it was Tuesday. And I'm like, none of this matters. Like everything you just said, I need to go like 6 minutes into the future. And it's just way too much context. So context actually only needs to be a tiny bit these days. What we need way more of on the heavier end is compelling and often conflict or climax. Like what's happening and how do I get there? Wow. So we kind of need to lean more into that range. So I think you can start by just answering some story-based sentences. Like the hardest moment of my life was, what I took from that was, I'll never forget when I felt differently about. Something that I've realized makes me unique is. One thing that really resonates with me is, and you just kind of start to finish those sentences. But a great activity is to give yourself only one paragraph and to write a compelling story for yourself. You might actually have to start with writing a page and then cut it in half. But if you want, because you might get so tripped up in the first sentence, like, what is my story? It is very hard. Honestly, another thing, this is probably so much of what you do, it's shockingly difficult to talk about yourself. Like you can talk about a product all day, you can talk about a brand all day, you can talk about the weather all day. But when it comes to like just you, doing the work of learning how to talk about yourself is such a gift, because it will always serve you across the board in all networking, branding, storytelling, connections. Like, what do you do? Why do you love it? Why does it matter? And that's a great initial brand story.
Wow, Katie, so many good takeaways. I think an action item, if you're watching this right now, is to grab that piece of paper and start writing out your story. I think those prompts are a great way to start. Katie, if they want to go deeper with you, learn more about the work that you're doing right now to help business owners, to help entrepreneurs, to help content creators learn how to tell their stories, what are some ways that they can connect with you?
Yeah, my website is katiequesada.com. My Instagram is the same. My Instagram is almost only stories. So I very rarely post.
Go figure. You're only using stories on Instagram.
A story over anything else. And then on my website, katiequesada.com, I have an e-course called Own Your Story. And in that, you can identify 7 key moments from your life. And that will help you identify values, and you can kind of start to think through, wow, what is this brand story? How do I say this in a sentence? Is this compelling? How does this feel? What does this look like? And you can start to kind of dial in.
So good. Katie, thank you so much for your time today, for coming on, helping the YouTube Made Simple viewers learn how to really express themselves more in their content, to be able to bring more of the stories that matter to the world, to help people understand that their story matters.
Yeah.
And I'm just so honored that you took the time today to bless us with this. So thank you so much.
Yeah, it's been so great. And one more thing I just was thinking about that I forgot. In my encouragement for your team and your people and everyone here listening, you just need to tell the truth. And I think that that is kind of a forgotten point in storytelling, because we try to make a story something it's not, but you actually just get to tell the truth. And when you tell the truth about your life and what happened and how it really felt, that really does birth a beautiful story. So sometimes with my clients, I just start with, tell me the truth about something that maybe you've been avoiding. Tell me the truth about something in your brand. Tell me the truth about a problem you solve. Tell me the truth. And just those words alone evoke a feeling that often connects to a brand story in a way that is really compelling, no matter what the product is, no matter what, if it's you, like what is an area of your life where you just want to tell the truth? And that might be the birth of a really compelling and captivating story.
Wow. I got goosebumps when you started saying that, because it is the thing, right?
Yeah.
Is just tell the truth, tell it how it happened. And that is where people will resonate, right? Back to that word again. That's where people will resonate, because it's real, because it's honest, and because it is your life story. So Katie, let's end it there, because that was amazing. Thank you so much for your time today. And I'll link everything down below. Question for you in the comments below. Let us know, what is the next story you're going to tell? Where are you going to put it, and what content? I'll be in the comments, and I'd love to read those. So make sure you post those down in the comments below. If you like content like this, make sure to subscribe so you get all of the action happening over here on the Think Media podcast channel. And if you've not yet signed up for our free YouTube class, you can do that at thinkmasterclass.com. We'll help you get started on YouTube today. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll catch you in the next episode.